Romans chapter 8, verses 1 through 17. I want to focus on verses 5 through 7, and I'll read it right now. Those who live according to the flesh have their mind set on what the flesh desires, but those who live according with the Spirit have their mind set on what the Spirit desires. The mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. The mind governed by the flesh is hostile to God. It does not submit to God's law, nor can it do so. Those who are in the realm of the flesh cannot please God. That's God's word. So Paul talks a lot here about the mind. The mind plays a key role. Will you live in sin? Will you live a holy life in harmony with God? He uses the phrases the mind set on what the Spirit desires, as opposed to the mind set on what the flesh desires. And he uses the phrase the mind governed by the flesh, as opposed to the mind governed by the Spirit. The mind set on, the mind governed by. What Paul is saying is that if your brain is focused, consumed, and ordered by godly things, then you will be godly in your actions. If your brain is focused, consumed, and ordered by sinful things, then you will act out in sinful ways. I don't think Paul is thinking merely about a discrete godly thought or a specific sinful thought that passes through your mind. I drive by Lancaster every now and then on the roads, and the closer I get to Lancaster, I see these billboards as I drive by. And they are Christian billboards. They have these Bible verses or some encouraging Christian message. But because they are billboards, I see them in a distance and I read them for a quick second and then just rushes by. I shouldn't really look at them very long, otherwise I might have a car accident. And I guess in the end, it's a net positive. I'm glad I saw them than seeing something negative or evil. In the middle of the day, I might likewise have a godly thought, gee, what a beautiful tree. God really made beautiful things in nature, and then it's there, then the thought is gone. Or I might have a sinful stray thought, I really hate that person, but like the billboard, it sort of goes in and out, passes by, it's not really there, it doesn't really stay with me. Again, I don't think this is what Paul is talking about. He's not talking about a mind that has ideas just flowing out really, really quickly. I mean, what Paul is describing is a mind that has been deeply, profoundly ordered and structured in such a way that's either in harmony with God or in harmony with Satan in a very deep, structural, profound, foundational way. I mean, let me put it this way. You are who you are, biologically and genetically. Think of your Myers-Briggs personality test or your Enneagram. I mean, that's kind of how you're hardwired. I mean, it's not going to change. It'll change, but it won't change that much. For example, I've discovered recently that I'm an INFP, and I'm an Enneagram Type 5 Wing 4. I did these tests recently, and when I first did these tests, I was like, good grief, that's my life. I understand me now. I mean, it really is that way for me. Maybe not that way for everyone, but I thought it was really deeply those sorts of things. So you have your personality and your ways of thinking. It's like it's hardwired in you. Now, there's some adjustment over life, I get that, but there's something essentially you. I mean, even though you are what you are, I mean, as a thought experiment, imagine if 30 minutes after you're born, you were adopted by a family in Mongolia, and you were raised in a yurt, which is a really big round tent in their frozen tundra, and you're spend your entire life as a nomadic. You're a sheep and goat herder. You got no technology. Or alternatively, your parents, after you're born, they moved to Seoul, Korea, or rather they stayed in Korea for your entire life. Mongolia, Philadelphia, Seoul. I know in the end of the day, you are who you are, and you are hardwired in your ways of being, in your body, in your personality. But surely your context, your environment, it deeply shapes and molds your mind, your values, as in what is valuable to you, your priorities, as in what is most important to you, your loves, as in what is it that you desire the most. I wonder if my parents had decided not to come to the US when I was a little child, but what if they stayed in Korea instead? Who would I be right now? I think about that sometimes. I don't know, but I do know that I'd be really, really different than who I am now. American culture has had an enormous effect on my mind, my thinking, the way I process ideas, my values, the way I think through ideas. Paul was writing to a minority Christian church living in the Roman capital of the Roman Empire. It was a capital of the whole world as far as they were concerned. And in the middle of Rome, there's this tiny church and a group of this new religion that's barely been around for a few decades. And Rome is pagan. The culture is powerful, it's dominant, it's everywhere, it's pervasive. And Roman culture is so radically different than the Christian values that Jesus was preaching. And we could spend forever on this, but let me just give you one little example of what Roman values were like, their priorities, their loves, their essence. Romans valued honor and glory above all else. Roman men acquired honor and glory by military conquest or by doing something amazing that brought power and prestige to Rome. And Romans, it was all about reputation and honor, reputation, being seen and being loved and being respected and feared by as many people as possible, and the right people. All Roman men wanted strength, power, domination, and most importantly, a glorious reputation. And that was at the heart and soul of the culture and values of the Roman Empire. It's hierarchical. You want to get to the top and dominate the world when you're there. And what does Jesus teach? Blessed are the meek, blessed are the mild, the poor in spirit. The first shall be last, for the last shall be first. If someone slaps you, turn the other cheek. What? Turn the other cheek? Honor demands revenge. Otherwise, you've been dishonored if you just let that go. And Jesus went to the poor, the crippled, the lepers, the criminals. Hanging out with these people does not get you honor and glory. In fact, it does the opposite. It degrades you. And then the God of the universe, the Messiah, the Son of God, allows himself willingly, voluntarily, to be stripped naked and crucified and die, displaying his weakness of the world. What? You're a Roman. This is just awful. It makes absolutely no sense. It's zero sense. Christianity is in many ways the complete opposite of the culture and values of Rome. Paul is saying, look, you're living in Rome. You probably think like a Roman. You need a completely new brain. You need a Christian brain. It's not just an inspiring, nice Bible verse here and there. Your brain needs a massive makeover. Later on, Paul's going to say in Romans chapter 12, verse 2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We could talk more about this later, perhaps, but we also, like those Christians in Rome that Paul's writing to, we live in a deeply unchristian culture. America has values that are antithetical to what God is calling us to. And our minds are naturally shaped and molded by this American pagan, unchristian culture. How much of our minds are governed by the things of God? And how much of our minds are governed by the things of the world? It's worth thinking about.